Lindell, my brother, come on in. All you got to do is unmute, baby.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Eric, for that introduction and welcome, everybody. My name is Lindell, and I am a recovered alcoholic. Um, there's some preliminaries I need to get out of the way. I'm a little bit nervous, and I'll tell you why. Um, there's two types of crowds inside of alcohol in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. One is the old timers, and they're more of a story-based crowd. And then there's like me, that are relatively new to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I like to deal with the facts. And today I'm properly armed with facts about myself and the disease of alcoholism that I suffer from. And Eric mentioned it. He said we talk about a message of depth and weight, and that's included in the doctor's opinion. Let me just go to that real quick, because I don't like to misquote anything. And by the way, anything that I say tonight that's not a direct quote from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or anything that I say that cannot be reconciled through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is simply my opinion. And again, as it was mentioned, opinions don't matter much. They're like frothy emotional appeal. They seldom suffice the real alcoholic. I'm the real alcoholic. I'm the guy that they talk about on page 21 of our big book. I'm the 100% hopeless variety. And once I put alcohol of any form inside of my system, anything that affects me from the neck up, I set off this craving, hypersensitivity that's in my body, and I set off a mental obsession. And apart from divine help, I'm unable to stop no matter how great the necessity or wish. In other words, I'm doomed. That's going to be my experience that I'm going to share with you tonight, because alcoholism almost killed me. Literally. I drank off and on for 58 years. I do have a sponsor, and today I sponsor, and I'm willing to sponsor others and take them through this wonderful big book of Alcoholics Anonymous the way my sponsor took me through. I have a home group. It's called Sunrise No Matter What. We're located in Henderson, Nevada. We meet 7 days a week. On Sundays, we have a speaker meeting, and we meet at 7 a.m. If anyone's interested, I'll put the information inside the chat. You're more than welcome to come out and visit with us. We'd love to have you. We're a relatively small group, but there's a lot of good recovery inside of our group. I am currently working with relatively new sponsees. I have some sponsees that I worked with once I got my year. The date is 11/05 of 2020. This is not my first rodeo. I was sober between 1990 and 1995 in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had a sponsor, but I was only entitled. I wasn't following suggestions. I wasn't taking direction. I was working a program, but it was what they call the off-the-wall program. When we see our sheets behind the podium, right? And I was working the steps, but not necessarily in any particular order, right? It could be step 12 today, step 3 tomorrow, step 1 today, that kind of program. But 12 steps is meant to be worked consecutively and in order and in their entirety. It took me a long time to come to that understanding here in the rooms. But what it says on page XXVIII, I think it is, it says frothy emotional appeals in the middle of the page seldom suffices. And it says the message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must, and I emphasize the word must, have depth and weight. And it goes on to say in nearly all cases, all is all encompassing. Their ideals, their thinking have to be grounded, or must be, there's that word again, in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. Wow, what a gift. I get a chance to recreate my life, the one that I destroyed by myself. That means I get to start over. So if you're new or relatively new, I'm going to ask you to please listen with an open mind. I'm not a prolific speaker. I'm just another alcoholic who's found this way of life, and I practice this way of life on a daily basis. I'm currently in the disciplines of steps 10, 11, and 12, so I don't need to do a yearly inventory. I do an inventory whenever it's necessary, daily and sometimes spot check inventory, because it says when I'm wrong or I've caused harm, that immediately I address that issue. So I don't wait because I harbor resentments. And resentments, according to the book, are the number one offender of most alcoholics. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. And from resentments stem all forms of spiritual dis. I want to pray a little bit. A couple of questions. Is there anyone that's here for the very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous or brand new to the program? I know we ask that, but sometimes we're a little shy. Okay. God, please show me the truth about the mental, the physical allergy, and please show me the truth about the mental obsession. And please show me the truth about the unmanageability with it. Yeah. And I ask that there be a decrease in me so that there might be an increase in my higher power. And that I'm able to transmit a message of hope and a message of recovery and of depth and weight. And how I choose to do that is by giving you information from the book as I align that parallelly with my story. This is not a program into thinking. It's not a program into feeling. The chapter is entitled Into Action. And I have to get into action in order to recover. And it says in chapter 5, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who completely, so thoroughly means 100%, completely means 100%. So what are we failing to do if we don't do that? And I asked my sponsor that question, and he says, to have an effective spiritual experience sufficient enough to bring about freedom from the disease of alcoholism, which centers in my thinking. It's not a book study, but I want to share some literature because I'm in love with the literature, and I'm definitely in love with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We talk about let's see, there's some books, conference approved AA literature, and some other books from the program, and one is of age. And on page 139 and over into 140, it says AA's 12th step, carrying the message, is the basic service our fellowship gives. It is our principal aim to aim and the main reason for our existence. AA is more than a set of principles. It is a society of recovered alcoholics in action. We must carry the AA message, otherwise we ourselves may fall into decay, and those who have not yet been given the truth may die. This is why we so often say that action is the magic word. I love the literature, right? The pamphlets. And there's one pamphlet called P35. I think it deals with problems other than alcohol, but it does say on page 2 of the pamphlet, sobriety, freedom from alcohol, give the impression that AA solves other problems or knows what to do about drug addiction. So make no mistake about it. I have a substantial history of drug abuse in my life, right, over the years. But this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and we do one thing and try to do many things and do none of them well at all. That's what my sponsor tells me. So while drugs and other substances are a part of many of our stories, I will try to keep my share confined to my problems with alcohol out of respect for the program and the traditions. I have a three legacy sponsor. I belong to a three legacy home and a lineage. I practice the steps, right, which is our message. I practice the traditions, and I also am learning about in a workshop the 12 concepts of service. And what I've learned is that the steps are a message, and they keep me from committing suicide. And the traditions protect our message and keep me from committing homicide. And the 12 concepts of service perpetuate our message and keep us from committing genocide. I knew none of this stuff prior to coming into Anonymous. Who you see on these squares today is not what I looked like, especially back in the early stages of my recovery. I had my first drink when I was 8 years old. I had been sexually molested by who also had violated my mom and all five of her sisters. So I had a sick uncle who was also an alcoholic. And I had a lot of resentments. What my sobriety looks like is a concoction of resentments. I hated everything and everybody. I didn't trust anyone or anybody. I had cursed God, and I committed my soul to the devil. So I didn't really have a whole lot of belief in God. Not the God that you told me about when I was a little kid going to service in church and Sunday school, all loving, all knowing, all powerful, omnipresent everywhere at the same time. Well, if he's all that, then why did he let such a terrible thing happen to me at that age? So I divorced my parents mentally. I divorced God in my heart. And I began to run on self-will. I don't mean to upset anyone's issues, but this is my story. I'm going to read something on page 31 that I think is important of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it specifically is addressing our stories. And it says, well, it's page 29. It says, we hope that no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I'm one of them too. I must have this thing. The book tells me in certain parts of the literature that the alcoholic in his cup is a very ugly creature. I am not a nice guy. You wouldn't like me when I'm drinking, when I'm untreated. I don't care about you. I don't care. I'm a liar. I'm a thief. I'm a cheat. I'm a fake, a phony, and a fraud. I'm a manipulator. I'm the kind of alcoholic, when I take a drink, I go into blackouts. Even my first drink at the age of 8, I blacked out. And I chased that feeling for the next 58 years. It tells me in the doctor's opinion that most alcoholics drink for the effect that's produced by alcohol. And that's my story. And besides, I believe I was drinking before that. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic. I believe I was. They say if you're a cucumber and you cross that line where you become a pickle, and then once you're a pickle, you can never go back to being a cucumber. I believe that I was a pickle right from the beginning. That's for me. My grandmother and some of my aunts, and of course my mother, they had home remedies. We didn't have money to go to doctors and dentists and things. I mean, when we got a toothache and the teeth were getting ready to come out, they took their finger and they stuck it in a bottle of whiskey, Jack Daniels or something like that, and then they rubbed their finger on your gums, which anesthetized the pain. And when we got ready to pull the tooth, we tied a string around a loose tooth, and then attached the opposite end of the string to a door knob, and then gave it enough room, and then they slammed the door and the tooth would be yanked out. So, um, you know, Bill Wilson, in one of his letters in 1942, he says, when we share our message, it should be an adequate description of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believe that. I'm leading with my heart, not my mind. And that's why I get quiet sometimes, because Alcoholics Anonymous is a message from the heart. And that's why I love the stories, because I'm able to identify and I'm able to relate to another person's pain, how they felt, what their behavior was like, all the incomprehensible, demoralizing things they had to go through and endure. You know, step one in the book is on page 44. It's a nice description. It says, when I honestly want to, I find that I cannot quit entirely. Or when drinking, I have little control over the amount I take. I'm probably an alcoholic. It says probably an alcoholic. And it says, if that be the case, I may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And that's another reason I get nervous, because we talk a lot about God in these rooms. Today, I do have a relationship with a God of my own conception. I no longer have that God that I grew up with in the church, my mother's God, my grandmother's God, my community's God. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a freedom to create this power. And I choose a loving, forgiving, merciful God today, right? The more I drink, the thirstier I get. And it all starts with the first drink. So let me explain to you what that looks like for me, this alcohol. If I take the cap off of a bottle of alcohol and I pour that cap full of alcohol and I take the tip of my tongue and I place it in that cap, I'm going to set off the phenomenon of craving. And once I start, I can't stop. I'm not telling you this because I read it in some book somewhere. Remember I told you I was in the rooms between 1990 and 1995? I got drunk in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, not on alcohol. Well, not alcohol you go buy over the counter at a liquor store. It was a vitamin supplement. They called it Sayuchi or ginseng. And there's two kinds. One's without a root, which is totally harmless. And that's what they were selling inside of the Alano Club at that time. And the other one, when they couldn't get the one without the root, came with a root. And when that root saturated with the ingredients inside of that vitamin supplement over a period of time, it became fermented. And I didn't know what fermentation was back then, but everybody was drinking it. And there were people with 25 years, 30 years. I had 5, 10 years going out, having to start over. I went out because of that Sayuchi, and I was gone for 27 years. 27. Because the Sayuchi had set off the phenomenon of craving. And once it did that, even after 5 years and knowing what I knew, I was not able to stop. I started doing things that were unthinkable. I was married. I had a 9-year marriage that I destroyed because of alcohol. I had a night that I destroyed because of alcohol. I had 2 beautiful daughters that I ruined and wrecked their life because of alcohol. I had a small business that I lost because of alcohol. I flunked out of college because of my alcoholism. I wish I could paint a pretty picture, but I never did anything that I wanted to do. I never went anywhere I wanted to go, and I never enjoyed drinking. Drinking was not fun for me. It was a necessity, because when I drank, it changed my reality. It changed my perception. It allowed me to deal with life on life's terms. And I don't do well with life on life's terms. I don't do well with life on Lindell's terms. So today, only by the grace, love, and mercy of a loving God that I live life today on God's terms. Um, you know, I wasn't an alcoholic. I had a friendly nudge from the judge back in 1985, and they sent me to Alcoholics Anonymous. My first meeting was at the Bertolano Club in Hawthorne, California, 1985. I was 25 years old, and when I came in through that threshold of the door, I saw the podium and I saw the sheets on the wall, and people greeted me. But there was a bunch of Harley Davidsons with a bunch of people in leathers, and they had these had these chains linked to their wallets and connected to their belt buckles. And I said, man, they sent me to the wrong place. I think I might have been only one of a few people that might have been of color, but I was one of the first people at the meeting, and there was no one of color. So I just knew I was in the wrong place. They still welcome me. Big urn, a silver coffee pot sitting in the corner, and it says, you're welcome to go and get a cup of coffee, and there's some cookies on the counter. And I had this older statesman in there, and he took me by up under the arm, and he says, come on, let me help you get a seat. He took me right to the front of the meeting, right in front of the podium, right? And he says, here's where I want you to sit, young man. And he says, just listen. Back then, they tell you to take the cotton out of your ears and stuff it in your mouth. I was offended when he said that. But what he was trying to tell me is that God gave us 2 ears so we could do twice as much listening as we do talking. But I was very arrogant when I came into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they read chapter 3, chapter 5, more about alcoholism. And I knew right then and there, when they said those words in incomprehensible demoralization, I understood the language of Alcoholics Anonymous right then in my heart. But I was not an alcoholic. You see, you guys were talking about from that podium the things that you had lost, your near-death experiences, your DUIs, loss of kids, careers, things like that. That hadn't happened to me yet. I couldn't be an alcoholic. But they said, son, they said, the reason we want you to listen is because Alcoholics Anonymous has a solution to your drinking problem. Even if you don't realize you have one, somebody thinks you have one. And they sent you here. So try to listen with an open mind and try to be teachable for the first time in your life. You would think I would get it. I didn't. I would leave my kids inside of the car with the keys inside the ignition because I'm a blackout drinker. For 3 hours, I come to and pray to God that car is still there. They're in a really bad neighborhood. They could be raped, kidnapped, sold into slavery, or even more. The police could have came and saw the kids sitting in the car by themselves, and it would have been child endangerment. All kinds of things. My God has always been there saving me through one scenario after another, but I didn't know it was my God. I was on an alcoholic bender for about 6 months. I'm an only child, no brothers and sisters, so I'm very selfish and self-centered, very egotistical, very narcissistic, misogynistic. I'm a mess, guys, when I'm untreated. But this particular day, I wanted to come by and see my mom. I'm in a stolen car. I've been drinking over the weekend, nonstop. I was supposed to be using someone's vehicle to go to the store to get more alcohol. And I kept their car for 4 days. So I was joyriding. Police were looking for me. They finally caught up with me with helicopters. the sheriff's department and school police in Sportsman Park in California, and they arrested me. But before I got arrested, I had used the car to go visit my mom. And my mom's retired from the nursing field, 25 years with Kaiser Hospital. And she normally sits inside of her bedroom smoking on one of her long brown Moore cigarettes, and she's drinking on a cup of coffee, and you can see the smoke coming through the window. And this particular day, the window was closed. And I said, well, she's retired. She doesn't go far. She probably went to the store. I'll wait. And while waiting there, the neighbor who lived across the street came around the corner and saw me sitting in the car and pulled up next to me and rolled their window down and says, how are you doing? And I'm in full flight from reality, total denial. And I said, I'm fine. We all know what that acronym means. And they said, well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. And I said, okay. So I'm sitting there with this old English, tall can of Old English 800 sitting between my legs. And I said, well, what happened to my mom? Did she fall down the stairs and break her leg or something? And he says, no, baby, your mother died. So what? So I needed to take a drink off of that can that was sitting in between my legs to get the courage to ask the next question. And so I said, so when's the funeral? And he says, baby, you didn't know? I said, no what? Lindell, they buried your mother 2 weeks ago. That woman that I was married to, she legally separated from me on paper and divorced me and took my kids. And I wanted to save my family. And I say this to say that anything I put before my recovery, I'm going to lose anyway. Recovery has to come first in my life, in this alcoholic's life. Nothing else matters. But my conscious contact with the God of my own understanding, that connection. I went into a 2-year program. I was 18 months into the program. My hope was to get my wife and my kids back. Even though she had divorced me, perhaps we could remarry. And I found out that she had a brain tumor. When they did surgery, they thought they got it all. But sometimes when cancer meets oxygen, it spreads like wildfire. And that's what it did, all through her body. She went back to work. Now, mind you, my wife was a very intelligent woman. She was Eurasian. She was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. She was raised in Holland. She came here to the United States with her parents. She spoke 5 languages. She had 3 degrees. She graduated from USC, the 4.0 grade point average. And she was not an alcoholic. She was not a drug addict. She ended up in the hospital. And then she was hospice. And June 22nd, 1989, we lost her. I'm telling you these things because on page 133, right, of the big book, is it 130? Yeah. It says, no, it's actually 132. Bottom of the page, it says, outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over the seemingly tragic experiences out of our past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and been given the power to help others. Wow. I've got a whole new purpose. I got a real purpose in my life today. Page 77 says, my real purpose, now that my God has saved my life, right? Because Alcoholics Anonymous is a gift from God. And what I do with the program is my gift back to God. So my real purpose is to be of maximum God and the people about me, whether they're alcoholic or not. So you would think that having gotten that news that she passed away, that I would have that moment of clarity. And I say, well, I still got these 2 kids and I am their biological father. I need to stand up and do the right thing by them. But I went and drank. And that was my first bout with homelessness. And 2 years into that process, I had another moment of clarity. And I said, well, you know what? I should try to go back and do the right thing by my kids. Again, anything I put before my recovery, I'm going to lose anyway. So I went to a judge. I got a lawyer, a little old Jewish man, really knew the law. And he did it pro bono. And after 5 years, I went before the judge and I said, I'd like to have custody of my kids. He says, Lindell, you got a pretty extensive drinking history here. And, I'm not real keen on giving your kids back. He said, but I tell you what, I'll work with you. He said, you bring me 5 years. That's when I got the 5 years in the rooms of AA between 1990 and 1995. You bring me 5 years of recovery and I'll consider. He just got to give them back. He said, I will consider giving you your kids back. So I joined United Fathers of America. I went back to meetings and I got my kids back. Within a year, I was drinking against them all over one more time. Wow. You would think I'm going to get it clear, right? I got a problem. Everybody knows I have a problem except me. I'm the last one to see I got a problem with alcohol. But it says alcohol was just a symptom. That there's a deeper underlying thing going on with me. And you know what it was? It was that incest that I experienced at the age of 8 years old. It was those resentments that I concocted with my uncle, my mother, all five of her sisters, my family, the police officers, the court system, the police, the guy that knocked my teeth out when I was 16 because I was drunk and said some disrespectful things to his girlfriend. And he didn't like that very much. And he took a pair of brass knuckles and he removed my front teeth. I've experienced a lot of loss here, right? But I have an opportunity today to recreate my life. I'm happy, joyous, and free, regardless of whatever has transpired in my life. And that's only because of the process of Alcoholics Anonymous and conscious contact with a God that's greater than you people, right? I'm going to share this with you. When I say divine intervention, I couldn't stop, right? My daughter, the one that I left in the car, I got a younger one. I got 6 grandkids down in California, and I got one grandchild up here. She's in the Air Force, and she's in South Korea right now, and she's on her way to Japan next year. But my daughter never calls me. And I was at the VA because I had a military career, and I was in the low-income housing. They pay the rent 9 months out of the year, free food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, free apartment, free cable, all of that, right? And at the end, I was locked in my room, trying to drink myself to death. Just prior to that, I had gotten in trouble with law enforcement because I was trying to transport 31 pounds of marijuana through the state Texas line by a state trooper and ended up in front of a magistrate. And I says, well, how much trouble am I in this time? He says, oh, son, you're in a lot of trouble. They were giving people 5 years just for a joint. I had 31 pounds. And he said, this is a third-degree felony punishable by 10 years in our Texas State Penitentiary. And that's done with hard labor. And one more time, Alcoholics Anonymous and a God of my understanding came to my rescue. You see, I didn't do anything to deserve this gift that I have. I did everything I could to destroy me. But God had a different plan for my life. Living in that room for 2 years, I had to stay sober for 2 years. I paid off all my court fines, all the probation, and they expunged my case. And now I'm in the room trying to drink myself to death because of the mess I've made of my life. I felt I didn't deserve to live. And my daughter happened to call me, the one I live with today here in Las Vegas, the one I left inside the car for 3 hours in a blackout upstairs. Well, Dad, I said, well, I'm not doing too good, right? This place I'm living is not very conducive to a healthy lifestyle, and I'm having a hard time. She said, why don't you come here? I said, because when my mother died, talking to my daughter, right? It's like, yeah, when my mom died, my dad died. I lost my dad in 1999. I lost my mother in 2000, and they both had property. So I inherited as an only child over $1 million worth of real estate, brand new car, 2 life insurance policies, a whole bunch of toys. And the best I could come up with was that I know what the problem is. It's California. That's where all my bad memories are. That's where all this negative stuff happened to me in my life. And what I need to do is leave California. I didn't know, and I heard you guys say it, but it didn't register. He said, Lindell, if you can't stay sober in California, what makes you think you're going to go anywhere else and stay sober? This is wherever you go, you take you with you. And I found out that to be true. Within 3 years, I was broke. The only thing I had left was the car. And the girlfriend that I had at that time, she says, I can't do it anymore. She says, you got to go. And so she said, oh, here, by the way, and she threw a backpack at me. And I said, what I need that for? Oh, you're going to need it. She was right. Hey. Eventually, I didn't have the finances to keep that car running, and I was sleeping in it. And when it conked out, I had to abandon it with all my worldly possessions. I ended up on the streets for the next 25 years, living in the bridges, sleeping in the bushes on the side of freeways. For many, many, many years, my address is 10329 South Wilson Place, Los Angeles, California, 90047. By the time I hit somewhat of a sufficient bottom, my address was 405 Freeway South, third bush to the left, right? I was eating out of trash cans, sleeping in vacant buildings and abandoned cars, squatting. You see, I had a misconception of what an alcoholic was. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. Today I do, because of you guys in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God for the co-founders of this program. I thought an alcoholic, man, was that guy you saw standing in front of the liquor store, panhandling for change to get his next drink. Or I thought the alcoholic was the guy in the alleyway on a dirty mattress with a brown paper bag in his back pocket with a wine bottle in it. Or maybe an alcoholic was that group of guys you saw standing on the corner passing around a 40 ounce. And all of them may be alcoholics. But that's not what makes me an alcoholic. Who I drank with, what I drank, and how much I drank does not make me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is described in the doctor's opinion. When I put alcohol inside of my system, I set off the phenomenal craving. And without any alcohol inside of my system, I have a mental obsession. And a mental obsession is an idea or thought that outweighs all other thoughts or ideas. I've been drinking from a very early age, and I could not live without alcohol. I was tore from the floor up. I needed a checkup from the neck up, and I didn't even know it. I was hours away from death. My body was shutting down. So when I came here to live with my daughter on November 5th of 2020, well, let's go back to November 4th, because she said, I'm going to come down and get you. She's going to take a day off work. She's going to rent a vehicle, a rental, and she's going to come pick me up. And my head told me, well, I'm not going to be able to drink again, because she said, if I come there, I can't drink. So I know I can't drink because I got my granddaughter there. She's never seen me drunk. So I'm going to do one last beer, right? And you know what happens when I drink? I black out. My daughter came. Everybody was trying to find me. I was so ashamed, so embarrassed. And I didn't know if my granddaughter had been in that car with her that day. So I couldn't face her. She had over 50 text messages. Dad, where are you? I'm here. So, you know what I mean? And she had to pay an extra fee because she finally took the car back. And it took me 3 days before I was able to make some kind of clarity in my mind, read all the messages, and finally get the courage to call her and say, you know what, I messed up, babe. So what happened? I said, I thought I could take one last drink, you know, and then I could start it. She says, oh, Dad. I said, I got drunk and I was too ashamed to face you. She said, well, thank you for being honest. I said, I know I've blown my opportunity to come there. She goes, no, you've always been honest with me. And I appreciate you telling the truth. So you're still able to come and stay here, but you cannot drink. I said, okay. She goes, but here's the catch. She said, I refuse to come back down to California to pick you up. If you want to come here, you need to get here on your own. I almost missed the bus. I did miss the bus, and one of the friends in the community gave me a ride to the train station, which took me to Oxnard, California. From there, I took a Greyhound bus to Las Vegas, and I've been here ever since. When I got here, I said I was tore from the floor up, needed a checkup from the neck up, right? I had brain damage. I had heart damage. I suffer from congestive heart failure today from all the drinking and the cigarettes, 2.5 packs a day for 47 years. Um, I have lung damage. I have severe COPD. I was on oxygen for the first 2 years when I came back. I'm still on steroids and a bureau, different specialists in my life. Um, I had damaged my lungs, right? And I had damaged my kidneys. Both my kidneys had shut down because of my high blood pressure. I knew high blood pressure was a silent killer, and I knew it affected certain areas of, you know, your physique, but I didn't know that it had anything to do with my kidneys. It's how your kidneys filter out the poison and the toxicity inside of your system. I had bleeding ulcers. I almost passed out. My daughter happened to see it, and she says, "What's wrong? Are you okay, Dad?" I said, "Yeah, I just need a breathing treatment." She says, "No, let's go to the hospital, get you checked out." I said, "I'm fine." She goes, "Dad, we're going to the ER." It's a good thing I did. My blood pressure was so off the chart that it took them 3 days just to get it down in the emergency room so they could admit me into the ICU. And when they finally got me into that room, they hooked me up to all these machines, and I had all these things connected to me. And it took some blood work, and the doctor came in the room the next morning and he says, "Lindell, it's a good thing you came in when you did." I said, "Well, why do you say that?" He says, "Because if you didn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now." I said, "So what does that mean?" He says, "You got so much toxicity inside of your systems, in my professional opinion. If you had went to sleep tonight, you would have went into a toxic coma, and we would have had to place you on life support until one of your kids made the decision to disconnect you." So when I tell you that I went to the absolute doorstep of death, that's what happened to me. When I tell you that alcohol removed from me, I allowed it to remove from me. I don't know if I allowed it because I'm powerless over alcohol. And my life is definitely unmanageable. So let's talk a little bit about the steps, right? Because I had kidney damage, I had liver damage, I had the beginning of not cirrhosis, but fibrosis. It's the onset of cirrhosis. And then I had contracted Hep C from all my other extracurricular activities out there. I haven't been able to go anywhere for the last 4 years. I just recently celebrated one of my fourth year in Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, they immediately put me on, they drilled a hole in my chest and put a catheter in there. And they would wheel me down 3 days out of the week in that hospital to the basement where I underwent dialysis treatments. That was for the first 3 months while they tried to save my kidneys, and they couldn't do it. Unbeknownst to me, while I was there for that, that was in 2020, I contracted COVID-19. So they released me from the hospital, and I went to the outpatient dialysis, where they test you before they allow you to come in and be around other patients. Anybody else sick. So I went to a secondary unit while I waited for the results to come back. And in 4 days, I returned, and they already had an ambulance and a gurney waiting on me. They put me in the back of the ambulance, and they whizzed me off. I thought this might be the last time I ever saw her again. And I went back in for another 3 months. And that's when I did steps 1, 2, and 3 in that hospital bed. I said, "God, I don't know you. I really don't. But if you're real, I'd really love to have a relationship with you. I'd like to get to know you." Just I never asked God to come into my heart. It was all lip service, trying to impress other people, trying to convince you that I had an understanding of God, that I had a relationship with God. But when I was faced with death, I had to get real serious and ask for some sincere help and divine guidance. So I did steps 1, 2, and 3 in that hospital room, and that's all they are. They're kind of they're they're I don't know what you call them, but, and you kind of reflect on your life, the fact what alcohol has done to you, and the unmanageability and everything you've messed up, all that. So steps one, they're kind of conclusions, if you will. But the real work for me began in steps 4 through 9. When I had to do the fearless moral inventory. And I used to think for years that said immoral inventory, but it said moral inventory. And then I had to share all of my deep, dark secrets after I addressed my resentments, right? I had to go to a special workshop because I've been trying to get sober since 1985 and didn't get sober till 2020. So my sponsor at that time took me to a back to basics workshop. And that's where they used to go through it was a 1946 workshop. And they still have it today. I sent some of my sponsees there just to get them through some of the more glaring character defects or, uh, resentments. And they take you through all 12 steps in a matter of 4 hours. And we just dealt with the things right then and there that was eating my lunch that would cause me to drink right now. And then I got to see that the 12 steps, especially the fourth step, was not the boogeyman, that I had just been prolonging the inevitable. You see, eventually I had to face me, and I didn't want to face me because there. I did things under the influence of alcohol that I'm not even aware of. Some of that stuff could have lasted me in the penitentiary for 10, 15, 25 years. I used to think that I'm a miracle because, you guys say, oh, you're a miracle, Lindell. No, I'm not. I'm not the miracle. You know what the miracle is? The miracle is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I just get to participate in the miracle, right? I get to recover, and I have been given the power to help others based on my experience. So I don't tell people what to do. I don't know what you need. I don't even know if you're an alcoholic. Got it. I see it, Eric. What we do is we go through the big book together. You start at the cover page, and I tell them to open up the cover page and tell me what you see on the left-hand side. That's what my sponsor did to me. I thought it was some kind of a cruel joke because I didn't see nothing. I said, well, I don't see nothing. He said, exactly. That's what you know about this program. So, Lindell, maybe for the first time in your life, be teachable and remain teachable. Steps 10 through 12, those are the maintenance steps. I practice those steps on a daily basis. The big book gives me instructions and directions on what to do every day. Any answer or any question I have on what to do as an alcoholic or what I need to do as an alcoholic is inside the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, especially the 164 pages in the doctor's opinion. So what I get is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of my fit spiritual condition. Right? Now, not only do I get a daily from the insanity of the first drink, but I get a daily reprieve from the insanity of my own thinking, because that's where the main problem for this alcoholic centers in my mind, even today. I can be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and still be untreated and not even know it. It tells me in that 10th step, I'll say this, and I got about 3 minutes left, but I want to share, not only have the 9th step promises come true in my life on page 80 and 83, but when I turn to page 85, it talks about the 10th step promises, right? And I got to let you know, there's alcohol in my home right now, and has been for the last few years that I've been sober. Something happened between 4 and 9 where the mental obsession got removed. And my sponsor promised me that would happen. He said, I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I can't tell you how it's going to happen. I can just tell you that if you do what the book suggests you do, if you're a real alcoholic and you do what the previous, like the first 100 did, you do what they did, then you'll get what they got. And so the mental obsession was removed. But then he took me to 85 and he talked about, he says, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. This is at the bottom of page 84. It says, my daughter is not an alcoholic. My son-in-law is not an alcoholic. There's a whole bar down there. So I'm around alcohol, right? And it tells us that, Anyway, let me go on. This is if tempted, we record flight. We react sanely and normally. We will find that this has happened automatically. We see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our own part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither as though we had been placed in a position of removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. I had to do a lot of work to be here with you guys today. Not only did I do the 4th-step inventory and do the 5th step and share everything, all those nooks and crannies and turn over all those stones, you know what I mean? Reveal all that stuff I swore I'd never tell anyone I take to the grave. Right after that, he made me do a fear inventory, and I was afraid of everything when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today, I don't have fear because fear and faith don't exist in the same house. When I have fear, right, my faith is weak to begin with, and I don't have confidence or courage in my higher power. I had to do a sex inventory. That's located on page 69 of our big book. I can tell you some stuff that I used to do, man, when I'm drinking and untreated, but we won't go into that. I've recovered from that too. I've been celibate for the last 4 years. I'm not looking for a relationship. I don't say that because I'm trying to put myself out there. The most important relationship I have today is with God and myself, and then others. Not only did I have to do a sex inventory, but I had to do a financial inventory. That's on page 78. I had all that money, and I ended up coming back to California with $26,000 of debt. In the last 4 years, I'm debt free. And after I did the financial inventory, I mean, it goes on. The big book tells me what to do about all my problems. And the point I'm trying to make as I close is that it tells me, why not apply to all of my other human problems the same process that I applied to my drinking? And I've done that, and it's worked. But I'll share this real quick and be quiet. Page 79 of the 12 and 12, because I'm in therapy today, right? I need all the help I can get, guys. Right? Because I'm a sick one. I am a sick one. I'm alcoholism. What I get is the daily reprieve. Bottom of the page of the 12 and 12. It says, very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they may have actually given our emotions since discolored our personalities and altered our lives for the worse. All I wanted to know, I didn't know this, but I'm a 3rd-generation alcoholic. And all I wanted to know is, how did I become so very ill from drinking alcohol? And today I know it wasn't my fault. My family was doing the best they could. My mother was doing the best she could. I've made amends. I wrote those letters because many of those people are dead today. But my sponsor said, you need to write a sincere and honest letter. And I get to go to the gravesite this year because I'm now free to travel and go about the globe and go anywhere any other free man on this earth can go today. And I owe that to Alcoholics Anonymous, you people, and a God of my own conception. We're all miracles, if you want to look at it like that. We each have a story to tell. And I don't know who's touched by my story. I don't know if I said anything that makes sense. But if you're new, please examine your relationship with alcohol and ask yourself the question I asked myself. Is alcohol doing more to me than it's doing for me? And if you, like me, can answer honestly to that question, I said yes. Then it says we have a solution here. We have a way up and out, right? Please join us on this broad road of freedom. And you too can recover one day at a time from a seemingly hopeless state of mind. Thanks for letting me share this.